Hi everyone, this is Gogo, the founder of Gogo Ching Consulting Limited. Welcome to the In Pursuit of Customer Loyalty in Conversation series. Joining me today, we have Andrew Sheridan. Welcome, Andrew.
Thanks, Gogo. Great to be here with you.
Thank you for joining us today. So Andrew is a master certified coach and is the co-founder of the Mindful Business Alliance, an international coaching, training, and consulting firm that helps organizations to improve employee engagement, loyalty, and productivity. Specializing in working with senior executives in Fortune 500 companies, Mindful Business Alliance is best known for its commitment to humanizing the workplace everywhere. Andrew and his team has trained more than 10,000 people and delivered over 800 experiential high-impact workshops around the world. Andrew is also a senior faculty member of the Coactive Training Institute and a member of the Google's Master Faculty. So thank you again for joining us today, Andrew, and to help me explore the pursuit of loyalty for the internal employees.
Thanks, Gogo. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
So, Andrew, am I right? That's only around 4% of the coaches hold the MCC, Master Certified Coach credential.
I think that's about right. I don't know the 2023 number, but certainly a year or two ago, yeah, it was around 4% of coaches achieved that credential, correct?
Wow, so it's very rare, and I certainly believe it requires a lot of effort. So can you tell us more of a definition of being an MCC Master Certified Coach?
Great question. The industry definition is, yeah, as you said, Master Certified Coach, MCC. What it means in terms of being able to achieve it is coaches have done more than 2,500 hours of one-on-one individual coaching and have undergone a pretty heavy amount of supervision, training, and have been through several different kinds of exams in order to achieve that status.
Very rigorous.
Yeah, it is very rigorous. It's a demanding process, and it's I think frustrating for some part of it, rigorous, but it's very rewarding. I certainly learned a lot in the process. There's also, I think, the sort of the moral meaning of Master Certified Coach, and of course, this is personal to each individual, I suppose. But for me, to be a Master Certified Coach, I think means to bring a certain level of presence, a willingness to create deeply meaningful and loyal client relationships, and to be able to, on the basis of that, take some risks in service of our clients getting what they want. It might require coaches to be courageous and hold a bigger picture in a way, which I think is one of the benefits of it, of experience and time.
And I certainly see that in you, Andrew, and that's why we're having you today to share those expertise with the wider audience.
Thank you.
So tell us more about your business, Mindful Business Alliance mission. So it's about humanize the workplace everywhere. So what does that mean, and why is that important to you?
Yeah, what it means, well, it was born out of many discussions I was having with my now business partner, Chuck Allen. The way in which we operated together. I remember him remarking that when we were just partnering on a project, he spoke often about how mindful I was about the way in which our relationship was being formed, the way in which we took care of one another when it came to things like a sense of well-being or a challenge in front of a training group. So there was this sort of mindful approach, being mindful, being responsible, being committed to relationship. What it means in terms of the business and why we have this mission is we've both worked for different organizations in very different industries, but we also saw with a lot of the organizations that we were doing trainings in at the time, mostly pure coach trainings, that there is sort of a lack of mindset around being thoughtful, being relational, being conscious about the impact we have on the relationships that we have around us, being a bit perhaps blind to the possibility for us to influence those in a positive way. And conversely, being a bit blind perhaps to the ways in which we unconsciously negatively impact those relationships. So for us, the idea of humanizing the workplace everywhere really stems from the fact that it's not actually so difficult because it's mostly mindset based. But what we've seen is many organizations stumbling or underperforming or struggling because their focus is almost exclusively on output, on achievements, on tasks. And there's great benefit to bringing in focus on the relational side as well. So who are we being as leaders or employees whilst we do our tasks that the organization asks us to do? And actually, a lot of organizations are just doing this at the expense of this. Whereas research has showed, and we certainly see it anecdotally in our own work, when we put the two together, results go up, loyalty increases, retention diminishes significantly. So there's a lot of benefits to this idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Andrew. And I think I see that's why, Andrew is going to add a lot of value for a business who pursue the loyalty for the end consumers, because without cultivating the loyalty internally with your employees, there's no way that the end customers are going to be loyal to the business.
100%. Without relationships, we just have transactions. So if I, as a consumer, need something more than once, I may come back. But if I've had a relationship develop with the people I'm buying from, I'm much more likely to choose them ahead of others, perhaps over price, perhaps over even quality in some cases. But if I don't have a relationship, it is just a simple transaction. And this is true internally as well as externally towards customers. I will stay in a job I don't really like. It's a transaction until I find one I like better. New transaction. However, if we can bring in some of this idea of this mindset of being relational, it's no longer a transaction. It's a mindful relationship.
Absolutely. So on the contrary of that, actually, a lot of organizations have some myth about how they take care of the employees and what's really matter versus what's more of ticking the boxes. And Andrew, you and I talk a lot about that. So I would like us to review some of the myths and decode them today. So why don't you start with one of the common myths that you've seen in an organization?
Yeah, the common myths are that we need to just focus on the tasks to get things done. So something that I was just speaking about before. I think one of the myths there is I don't have time for relationships. I'm busy. I have to get my tasks done. So we see this over and over again. How am I supposed to be more like this, do more of these things when I have responsibilities, I have expectations from me, from my boss, from the organization? So this is a myth that we spend a lot of time decoding, because actually being a decent person at work shouldn't take you more time. It's about a way of being attentive to people, being present, listening, supporting people, and so on. So that's one big myth we spend a lot of time decoding, that a mindful business environment takes more time. This is a false idea.
Like that. The second one, which I have experienced, and I'm sure a lot of audience do also, it's Wellness Day. It's a good solution.
Oh,
and how do you see that?
this one is an interesting one. It's becoming more and more popular. I'm sure many people can relate. We see more and more organizations trending towards you said it, wellness as an idea. So organizations proudly proclaiming that they invest time in wellness. Maybe they give people access to coaching or to therapy. They give them incentives to, for some of their time off or things like this. And nicer chairs, open office, all well intended. We live in a time when mental health and well-being are big topics at work, and they're common, and they definitely need attention. The trick here is that it's often done instead of improving the work itself. So I'm pretty sure anybody listening to this will know or have been through their own experience of being downsized. Maybe people have lost their jobs. What we never see, though, with things like downsizing is we don't see the work volume drop. So typically what happens is a certain percentage of people are removed, or indeed they just leave, because the culture isn't great. But typically work volume doesn't go down. So people are asked to do more with less. And the company's solution is to offer wellness days or things like this, rather than actually improving the way they work. In 2023, everybody's hyper connected. We have endless new ways to message people, to track projects, endless pings on our phones and our devices. We're working in a global environment. People, especially in certain parts of the world, are being asked to do extremely early or extremely late calls. So all of these demands are encroaching on people's downtime and private time. And rather than addressing those, organizations tend to put in things like, wellness initiatives. And it's a good start, but certainly from a mindful perspective, we would rather see organizations start to consider how much they're actually asking of people, put in policies which say, when your time is up, it's up, whatever that is, 5 p.m., 6 p.m., 7 p.m. But actually to be more respectful of people's time outside of the office as well.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for pointing that myth out. And the other one that you and I talk about quite a lot, it's around when the leaders should be doing feedback and development sessions with the team. And mostly, a lot of leaders, they sort of left it until the appraisal cycles. So how do you see that one?
I think it's also ready to evolve to its next level. I think you and I were both raised in the corporate world over the last 20 years or so, where an annual or maybe semi-annual appraisal was what we received from our leaders. And in many cases, perhaps leaders we didn't even really know or have a lot of relationship with. This isn't really effective today. In today's world, it moves fast. People have higher expectations. We have a greater sort of overall sense of awareness and emotional intelligence. People need feedback on an ongoing basis. And when we've developed decent relationships at work, when we have trust, when we have connection, when we feel seen, it shouldn't be hard for me as a leader to give feedback to the people around me in the moment. The sort of the annual or semi-annual appraisal cycle has created this idea that once a year I get feedback, and it's disproportionately in the favor of the organization, because if I don't have the budget or the desire to maybe promote somebody or give them a pay rise, I can make them wait 6 to 12 months to share that information on the basis of a not very good appraisal. So in the mindful business approach, we're always talking about feedback should be constant. There should never be any surprises when you get to an appraisal cycle situation. It should just be, if you like, a formalization of things that are already known. So I think as a myth, the idea that appraisals actually do good, I think is becoming more and more questionable. I think if every leader knows how to have healthy, brief, but honest, vulnerable, and psychologically safe conversations with their people on an ongoing basis, you could almost do away with the need for that. And people know more where they are at any stage.
And we'll go back to that one and share more tips from Andrew's expertise as well in regards to how leader do more timely feedbacks. And so moving on to the next question, Andrew, I know that organizations do value employees' loyalty, and what they have been focusing on, a lot of it's around like looking into remuneration, salary, development opportunities. And these work to a certain extent, but I also know that MBA, Mindful Business Alliance, and yourself has a perspective on to what extent remuneration matters to employees' loyalty. So we'd love to hear your thought on it.
Yes, it absolutely matters, and only up to a point. So there is some research out there, and I'm forgetting who did it now, but the research was quite clear that if you are paying people a market rate, give or take a little bit, a few percentage points either way, if people are being remunerated at a rate that is related to their industry and their experience and so on, then you're hitting the right notes. And in theory, you should have no problems. In practice, there is a piece missing from this. You will have no problems as long as people work in an environment that feels safe. And this is where the mindful part comes in. If people feel that they are part of an organization that cares about them, where they feel like they have a future, where they feel like they have a voice, where their contribution matters, where they feel seen, then an appropriate market level salary is a good thing. What we've seen all too often with organizations is when there's high turnover or something like that, you'll often see leaders complain that we pay people well, we pay them above market. And actually, the evidence is right there. If you are not treating people well, if you do not have a developmental growth mindset, a relational mindset, then we're back to this idea of a transaction. I receive X amount of money in exchange for me delivering something, but it's nothing more, nothing less. And so in that case, it's one of the few things that people can use as leverage when they are unhappy or they feel dissatisfied. I can use my salary as a bargaining chip, essentially, or my bonus or lack thereof, or my shares, my equity, whatever. So it becomes leverage for people to move or try to move or to negotiate with the employer. But what we've seen over and over again is that when people feel like they belong, this typically isn't a conversation. It's typically not necessary. So it is definitely true that you do need to be paying a good market wage and you do need to have a good, a reasonable package for the industry and so on. But unless you're cultivating these relationships at the same time, its value as a loyalty tool is pretty limited.
It's really valid that you point this out. My business value and one of the core mission is to curate more memorable human interactions, both in a workplace, but also for the end consumers. So what is your view in terms of the importance of curating memorable human interactions?
I think it's crucial in many ways. And I think there's several sides of this. I think one is just the human experience part. If I'm having a good, memorable experience, this will be something that I remember in a way that I will give it some kind of meaning, right? So I will have fond recollections of it, and I will likely tell people about this experience. So there is the knock-on effect there that if I've had a good experience with you as a service provider of some description, that feels good. I'm likely to tell people about it. I think it's also important because if leaders are creating memorable experiences for their people, there's a knock-on effect. The people are then creating memorable experience for their customers or for their colleagues. And so it becomes a sort of a circular experience. In a way, everybody wins, right? The customers are happy, they come back. Customers are happy, they also tell people about it, who also come back. So that part of the business grows. If the employees are happy, they are more likely to be more sincere, be more engaging with their customers. They're likely to perhaps be a bit more creative in their thinking about how they can support their customers in ways that feel, legitimate and honest and real. Leaders are likely to be happy if they see the results coming back that way. They're likely to then engage in more of the same. So it really is a circular experience. And so I think having a focus on creating a memorable experience is a great, almost like headline for anybody running a business. And ultimately, it should filter all the way down to the frontline people, down to the people, cleaning the office or serving the drinks in the canteen. If I'm creating memorable experiences, everybody's in a more creative space. Everybody wins. So it might sound a little dreamy, but I think there is a lot of validity in it. And I think these are not hard things to achieve with a little bit of focus. It's back to the idea of mindset. It moves us away from being in a transaction-oriented environment.
And, we talk about in a luxury retail context, brands love to create experiences, create storytelling moments for the customers. And a lot of time, the focus has been put on create stories around the brand, around craftsmanship, around the products, which are important. But I think you have pointed out that the best stories and most memorable storytelling is an experience that the clients themselves are involved.
Yeah, there is great value in training people well to tell good stories about your product and your business. I think this definitely shouldn't be dismissed. But I think the piece that's really important is the piece you added at the end is, what am I doing for the customer in all of this? Because in a way, when I'm telling a story about my brand, this is about me and my brand. So the focus is over here. If we're lucky, the customer enjoys this kind of thing, but we don't really know that. So how can I involve the customer in this? How can I share my story as part of learning about their story or hearing about theirs? I think if we can connect the two, that's a really winning formula. So I think it's storytelling 2.0. I think, and it doesn't have to be profound, but to make somebody feel good, to give them an experience that they really enjoyed, that's a good story. It makes me think of one of the first times I saw Chuck Allen, my business partner, on stage, I remember him saying very specifically, he was doing a bit of work around storytelling in business. And he said something to the effect of, I'm not going to quote him exactly right, but your clients are going to tell stories in any case. It's your job to make sure they're telling good stories. And I think this is quite relevant in pretty much any relationships in our day-to-day lives, but of course, specifically in a retail luxury kind of business. What are the stories your customers are telling? That creates loyalty.
Love that, and love your methodology of that storytelling 2.0. That's something we can explore more for sure. So moving on to the next question, and I know we touched upon this a little bit already. So what is employee loyalty to you, and how do you and your business support other businesses to build employee loyalty?
Employee loyalty to me or to us is, I think it's a relationship that is above that transactional level. So loyalty is, it's almost like a two-way street. There is a respect in both directions between the organization and the individual. There is a recognition for the contribution that the individual brings to the business. There is, from the employee, there is a willingness to make it more than just a job. So putting my, I wouldn't say heart and soul into it, but I think, that there is a sense of commitment, of pride, of delight in some of the things that I'm doing. And I think it's crucial that there's an understanding of the bigger picture. What is my part in this machine? What is my role contributing to the bigger goals of this organization? I often think of loyalty as, it's sort of anecdotal, but if I ask a leader, how many of your people would stay late on a Friday if you've got something critical going on? And I think loyalty, in a way, there's a bit of a litmus test there, but how many people would be willing to stick around and help you out? It's often a good sense of how much loyalty people have. So I think those are sort of examples of loyalty from the employee side. In terms of what we're doing with the MBA in order to help cultivate more of that, a lot of it is just training people in very simple skills that will help to shift the culture and the mindset of the individuals that are leading this business, and even the individuals working in the business too. Taking core coaching skills, simple skills around emotional intelligence, presence, and those types of things, really bringing those into the organization to help shift the mindset of the way people are operating on a day-to-day basis. Those are the ways in which we're helping to cultivate more of that.
Love that. So, going back to coaching, right? Still a lot of organizations have focused on it already, but I think there's still quite some room to scale that. So in your opinion, why is it important for leaders to learn and apply coaching in their team management nowadays?
I think coaching is one of the simplest and sort of highest impact, if you like, return on investment ways of developing leaders to help them bring more of that relationship piece of their day-to-day roles into the organization. Leaders typically are in those roles because they have great task abilities. They know how to get things done. Maybe they're good at strategy. Maybe they're subject matter experts. So we can typically assume, for the most part, that leaders are competent on a technical level. What coaching does is it helps develop the relational side, because all of us have had the experience of working with people where we were scratching our heads wondering, why on earth is this person a leader? Usually it's not because of a lack of technical expertise. It's because of a lack of human relational expertise. So coaching skills is one of the easiest ways to begin to address this. Humans are well built to learn and to develop with these kinds of approaches because they're very affirming. They're not difficult. They're not challenging. They are simple ways of being. Coaching is a great way to start that development process.
Right. And certainly I'm a firm believer in that. That's why I've go through the coactive coaching module with Andrew and his team as well. So going back to some basic, like I want, I'm sure more than me, like a lot of audience here, they want to learn, like, what are some fundamental coaching skills that every leader should invest in learning?
In an ideal world, everybody would invest in developing their listening skills. It's almost ironic how often we talk about this, and people will say, "I'm a good listener," and then we watch them not listen in the conversation that follows. It's not the same as hearing. People know how to hear, but do they really know how to listen? And really, listening is listening at a level that is about the other person, about their experience, about what they're saying, about what they need, about the challenges they have. So it's really listening in a way that is connected and deep and present, even if it's only for 30 seconds. So I think every leader can definitely benefit from developing their listening skills and having an awareness of when they're not listening or not able to. There are many circumstances in our day-to-day lives when listening is challenging. We've got things happening around us that distract us. But having the ability to distinguish between those things would go a long way. I think the other really important skill for people to develop is presence. And it's a bit of an extension of listening in a way. To be present with someone is important. We've all had the experience of talking to someone when we know they're not listening. And it's a very demoralizing experience. And as humans, we are all guilty of this from time to time, but very often you'll see leaders who are so busy, they are hearing but not listening. And this has an impact on a long term, on the long term, which is definitely not good for the organization or for the leaders. So developing the ability to be present. We're humans having complex lives, most of us, and a leader's ability to be present with me, even if it's very brief when I'm having an experience, can be very powerful. There are sort of other, spin-offs from this as well. Developing a sense of curiosity, the ability to ask questions that are useful, that are supportive, that will help people to explore where they can be more resourceful, to help people see their strengths, to help them notice perhaps where they're struggling. So being able to be curious for the sake of somebody else is also super important. So I think the listening, presence, curiosity, and in all of this, I think the ability to ask good questions is important. Many of us are trained to ask sort of data-driven clarification types of questions, what we would call in the coaching world closed questions. Is it open? Is it closed? Is it blue? Is it yellow? We're sort of narrowing down to solve problems. These are not particularly useful in a relationship. In a relationship, asking an open question that somebody can then go and explore and reflect on can be also very, very empowering. And it can help people to learn and explore their own resourcefulness in a great way. So there is a sort of a long-term impact on that too, in favor of a leader. The old analogy, I think it was from biblical times, of that you can teach a man to fish, right, rather than fishing for them. So all of that can come from these, I would say, these 4 core skills.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Very concise but variable sharing, Andrew. So the next question that I have is, we have a lot of audience here in a retail context, retail managers, store managers, client development teams. So how do you see these people and client advisors? I'm coaching client advisors on communications. How do you see retail audience apply coaching in their context?
I would pick up on a word you just used, which is communication. I think the great thing about coaching skills is they can apply to any context, right? So it could apply to people's home lives, it could apply to their work lives. And I think here, what coaching skills bring is the ability to communicate better, more clearly, and with a clearer sense of purpose. So I can imagine a scenario in which a retail team is given coach training skills similar to the ones we just talked about, which helps them to therefore have more, I want to say targeted, but that sounds a little bit tough, but more specific conversations or relevant conversations with the customers who are in front of them. It helps to develop the nuances of being aware of, is this customer really listening to me? Are they interested in what I'm sharing with them? Do I need to change tack? Do I need to get curious about something different? So my ability to distinguish between what one customer needs over another through my listening skills, through my curiosity, I think there's great significance there in any of the client-facing roles. But it is back to this phrase I used earlier on, it is circular. I think if people in front of customers are doing this, then it can also go the other way. So to the teams internally who I need to help me perhaps sell better to the customer or respond better to the customer, I can use it with my leadership. My leadership can use it with me. We can all use it with the customers. So I think it's very, very circular, developing these skills and just changing the context of why we're doing them. So I would use these skills to coach somebody on their topics. I would say in your industry, people get to use them to serve their customers better, to serve their providers better, to serve their leadership better, and so on. So I think it's a very circular, respectful, two-way, three-way kind of outcome.
I can't agree more, Andrew. And I think if everyone in the retail industry is able to, apply all the coaching skills that you mentioned, the listening, the be present, the curiosity, the client experience will be a lot more authentic and real and relevant to individual.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we can say it enough. We've all had the experience of going into a retail store and not being treated in a way that feels good to us. And usually it's not malicious, it's just poor communication or poor skills or poor training. But what a wasted opportunity. And anybody at any level can learn and apply these kinds of skills, because we've also all had the experience where we were treated in a way that made us feel seen, made us feel like we matter. And that's almost priceless, because people will come back again and again to people who've treated them in that way. I will remember how you made me feel. That is important, and it's not difficult to achieve. But we've all had so many experiences where we just felt deflated or unimportant. And we remember those too, and those become part of our story. And they're not good stories for people to be telling about your brand. So yeah, so there's a lot of value to be taken from putting coaching skills into these kinds of environments, definitely.
Yes, and I think that sums up our day, today's interview, talking about why genuine human interaction is so priceless, but it's also very timeless. And it's one thing that every organization, especially luxury organizations, should invest in their employees and helping them to get better at.
Yeah, 100%. It would definitely be a dream of mine that everybody would take this on, because it's usually a very low investment relative to the reward. The rewards are long, very long term. So yeah, I wish you and your industry great success in bringing more of this in, because everybody can benefit.
Thank you, Andrew. So we certainly haven't had enough with Andrew. So with that, Andrew is going to offer one delight and surprise with one fortunate viewer. So can you review that for us, Andrew?
Sure, yeah. So I would be offering some time to a viewer. So I would like to just give some time for a one-on-one conversation about how any of these things that we've talked about here could be applied to you in your work, in your life, in ways that can be useful. So putting coaching skills into any use in your environment. That's what I would like to offer.
Great. So thank you so much, Andrew, again today, for your time, for your insight, for being present with us, and your wisdom.
Thank you so much for having me on the show, Goga. It's been a pleasure.
Great. And thank you for joining us in today's episode. I hope you enjoy it. Have a great day ahead. Bye-bye.
Bye.